So in this video, guys, I want to show you how we go from this ineffective thumbnail to this effective thumbnail. And this process should really only take you around about 5 minutes once you decided on your video title. So to start with, we're going to delete out this text because it's really illegible. What I normally do when I start to make my thumbnails is I start by cropping out the image that I want to highlight. So in this case, it's going to be the image of myself. So we're just going to roughly highlight that with the quick selection tool in Photoshop. Now you can use other applications as well, like GIMP or something like that, which is free. It can be a little bit awkward just to highlight this because I tend to blend in with the chair. So once you've got your rough outline of your image here, if you just jump over into select and then select and mask, it will show you what your crop is going to look like. Now here you can adjust it slightly if you need to. You can either paint it, refine the edge, or use the quick selection tool. We're just going to use our quick selection tool again just to tidy this up. You can see it's completely removed off of my t-shirt logo and my arm looks a little bit weird. If the quick selection tool is selecting more than it should be, you can also select this tool here, which does let you just paint straight on, although it can produce kind of slightly wonky lines, but it just about worked there. This is looking pretty good. Normally what I do at this stage is I'll add a little bit of a feather just to make the line a little bit less crisp. If we click OK, and then if we use Control J to create a separate layer. With this layer here, guys, we're going to want to highlight it. So if we just click on effects and then outer glow, here we can see an example of what our image is going to look like with that glow on. It's not really showing much at the moment. So we're going to need to tweak a few settings. If we just set that to softer, then tweak that right up to sort of around 50%. Then we want to increase the pixel size. If I move that up to about 20 pixels or so, 20, 30 pixels. Then we want to increase the range up to 100%. You can see in this area here, guys, that we've got a little bit of extra stuff that we don't actually want to include. So we just need to use the rubber tool to get rid of that. The next thing that I normally do is I will link these layers together, and then I will move everything over to the right so that we've got less unnecessary background in there. So what that's going to do is it's going to give you a giant space here, but that's okay because we can actually just fill that one. So let me just unlink this layer here. If we make sure that the background layer is the one that is selected, and then if we use the rectangular tool and just select this whole empty space here, if we then right click and select fill, we want content aware because that's going to fill it with the same kind of content as the rest of the background. We just Control D to deselect that. We can see that kind of blends in with the background. It's not 100%, but we are going to put some effects on the background anyway to kind of mitigate the background. First effect that we're going to add to this background to make it a little bit less prominent is we're going to add something called a radial blur. If you make sure that your background layer is selected, then go into filter and then blur and then select radial blur. The 10% should be fine. We want it in spin, good quality, and then select OK. That's our radial blur, so that automatically makes the background a little bit less prominent. Now, the next thing that we want to add is a gradient overlay. So if we just select that background, then select effects again, and then we want a gradient overlay. Now, you can have gradient overlay or you can have a single color overlay. Either one of those is fine. I like to use a pink to blue because it matches up with my lighting. So I would recommend with this blend mode normal opacity, you want to reduce that down because otherwise it's going to completely overlap the background color. Just select OK on that and then make sure that that's visible. Then that looks about right. We could just reduce that opacity down to say 37 so we can still see the chair and things in the background. We're going to use a font that I like to use, which is Ala Bold. We're going to use caps lock as well. We're going to do this as two different layers. The first thing that we want to do with our text is we want to add a shadow onto it, a drop shadow, just to make it a little bit easier to read. What we can do here as well, guys, since we've already got this effect on there, is we can right click and copy layer style and then right click and paste layer style onto the credits. That just makes things a little bit simpler. Now that we've got this text in, guys, we just need to add some colored boxes. So I'm just going to select the rectangle tool and then draw an outline around our first piece of text, which is stream. I need to move this down below there now. For the fill color, we're just going to select this hot pink, although red is a totally valid color to use. If you're not into pink, red's definitely a good way to go. Now we've got that box in there. We're going to do the second box for the credits section. We want to move that one to below the stream credit. Right, now that's very boring because it's all in one color. We're going to reverse the colors on this text. So I'm going to make this text pink. As you can see here, it's the same pink as the background. Now that's going to blend it all in. It's going to look terrible. But we are going to now make that background box white. Go back into boxes. That should let us fill it with white. Perfect. And now what we want to do with our boxes is we want to give them a drop shadow just so that they pop out a little bit more from the background. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to add the same drop shadow onto that we added onto the text. I might make that a little bit less opaque, but there should do it. And then we're just going to do the same thing that we did before, where we copy the layer style and we paste it onto the other rectangle. Okay, so that's looking good already. Obviously the text is in a really dodgy place, so we're going to need to now move that around. So if we link credit and its background rectangle together, and then we link stream and its background rectangle together as well, I might make this a little bit bigger. If we hit Control T and then lock that, then it won't go skewy when we make it bigger. That looks about right, so I'll hit enter there. What I also like to do here, guys, is slightly change the angle of this just so that these two are overlapping. And now you can see these need to be moved upwards because they're not on top, so let's just move them up to the top here. There we go. You see that stream is like slightly overlapping the credits now, so if I just move that down slightly and then maybe move this so that it's the other way. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, yeah, that's slightly too skewy. So let's move that down again. Okay, that's looking good. That's looking good. We've got the stream credits there. We're pointing over at the stream credits. So now that we've got all those lined up correctly, what I normally do is take all of these elements and link them together. So we're going to need to unlink them and then link them again. So now if we need to, we can just move them like up and down. So we've got our blurred out background, we've got our highlighted image of ourselves, and we've got our text. So now what we need to do, because this is a video about stream credits, is add in an image of our stream credits. So let's pull that image in. We're going to remove this header section because it's just a little bit too prominent. So we'll just select that and then delete that out. So let's move that over to our thumbnail and just see what that looks like independently on its own before we make any changes. So we can see that this text is a little bit too dark really for that background. You're not going to be able to see that. So let's add a color overlay to it to make it a little bit brighter. I think if we go for white on this darker background, that's going to look better. Yes, that's looking good. If we reduce that back down to 10%, we'll be able to see that's way more visible than it was before. Let's just up that back up to 50 so that we can see what we're doing. Now, to make this even more prominent, what we can do is we can add an outer glow. Now, this outer glow is kind of way too prominent for this, so let's just reduce that down. We don't want it to be quite as big as that, or we don't want the range to be that big either. If I reduce that opacity, that's probably a little bit better as well. We should now add a drop shadow. So let's add our drop shadow here. There we go. That's looking a lot more readable. And if you want to, guys, you can also add a stroke. Let's pop that in black. Yes, perfect. That's looking good. So that's a 3-pixel stroke. And all that does is it adds an outline around the text, which again makes it more readable. Let's reduce that down to 10% again, just to see what the impact is of that. Yes, that's much better. I can actually read the text now at that size. So that, guys, is our finished thumbnail. We've gone from a really boring image with some dodgy curly text on it that no one can read to an effective thumbnail. And this whole process, once you've really got it down, guys, should only take you about 5 minutes per thumbnail. The actual style of the thumbnail is something you'll want to keep the same throughout your videos for consistency. Once you've created one template for your thumbnail, it's going to be so easy to produce these over and over again. An effective thumbnail can really be the difference between someone clicking on your video and someone totally ignoring it. It is worth taking that 5 minutes of time to just get your thumbnail looking clickable.